Stop what you're doing. I need you to hear this statistic because it sounds fake, but it's 100% real. Right now, in 2026, there are regions in America where you are statistically more likely to run into a grizzly bear than another human being. I'm not talking about some remote corner of a national park. I'm talking about places where people actually live, towns with post offices and gas stations. And it's not just one place, it's happening across 9 different states. And those states, they're losing 200,000 people this year. That's an entire city just vanishing. And by the time I'm done showing you what's really happening, you're going to understand why millions of Americans are making the hardest decision of their lives, abandoning their homes and never looking back. Okay, I need you to wrap your head around something absolutely wild. Right now, in 2026, there are parts of America where you are statistically more likely to encounter a grizzly bear than another human being. I'm not talking about some remote corner of a national park. I'm talking about towns, communities, places where people are actually trying to live normal lives. And honestly, that should terrify every politician in Washington, because it's not getting better. It's getting worse. Here's the reality nobody wants to talk about. 9 states in America are experiencing a full-blown population collapse. Not a slowdown, not a minor dip, a collapse. Combined, these states are on track to lose 200,000 residents in 2026 alone. That's an entire mid-sized city just vanishing. But here's what really keeps me up at night. These aren't random states. They're not tiny islands or territories. These are massive chunks of America, states bigger than entire European countries, and they're emptying out at an accelerating rate. So buckle up, because what I'm about to show you isn't just interesting geography trivia. This is a warning sign of a much bigger crisis unfolding across America. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand why millions of Americans are making the hardest decision of their lives, leaving their homes behind. Number 1, Alaska. The grizzly ratio. Let me start with the stat that inspired this entire video. In Alaska, there are approximately 30,000 grizzly bears. The human population? 735,000 and dropping fast. Now that might not sound too crazy until I tell you this. In some regions of Alaska, the bear-to-human ratio is nearly 1-to-1. In others, the bears actually win. Think about that for a second. You're living in a place where your chances of running into a 600-pound apex predator are roughly the same as running into your neighbor. That's not adventure. That's survival mode. Every single day. But here's the twist. The bears aren't the reason people are leaving. The bears were always there. What changed is everything else. Alaska lost 8,400 residents in 2025. That's the biggest single-year drop since the late 1980s. And 2026, we're on track to lose another 9,000. At this rate, Alaska will have fewer than 720,000 people by 2028. For a state that's 663,000 square miles, that's apocalyptic level emptiness. Let me tell you about Rebecca, a teacher who moved to Juneau in 2022. She had dreams, man. Big dreams. I'll teach, explore the wilderness, live the Alaska experience, she told me. She lasted 26 months. Here's what broke her. It wasn't the darkness, though 4 months of barely seeing the sun definitely messed with her head. It wasn't even the cold, though. 35F mornings where your car won't start get old real fast. It was the costs. Rebecca was making $62,000 as a high school English teacher. Sounds decent, right? Her studio apartment cost $1,850 a month. Her electricity bill in winter averaged $420. Groceries for one person? $650 a month, and that's shopping carefully. A simple dinner out? $45 minimum. I did the math one night, Rebecca told me. After rent, utilities, food, and my student loans, I had $340 left each month for everything else. Gas, car insurance, phone, literally everything. I was living paycheck to paycheck on a teacher's salary in a studio apartment. It's not sustainable. But here's the really messed up part. Rebecca wanted to save money to eventually buy a home. The median home price in Juneau? $425,000. On her salary, even if she saved aggressively, it would take her 18 years to save a 20% down payment. 18 years. In a studio apartment. never taking a vacation, never having an emergency. She left in December 2025, moved to Washington State. Same teaching job, same salary, but now her rent is $1,000 and groceries cost 40% less. She can actually breathe financially. And she's one of thousands making the same calculation. When the math doesn't work, people leave. It's that simple. Alaska is beautiful, Alaska is wild, but Alaska is becoming unlivable for anyone who isn't wealthy or heavily subsidized by the oil industry. Speaking of oil, that's the other shoe dropping. Alaska's economy has been propped up by oil money for decades. The famous permanent fund dividend that used to pay every resident $2,000 per year? It's down to $1,000 now. The state budget is hemorrhaging. Schools are consolidating, services are being cut. Infrastructure is crumbling. By 2028, experts predict Alaska will be in a full-blown economic crisis. And when that happens, the trickle of people leaving becomes a flood. The bears will finally have the place to themselves. Number 2. Montana. When nature fights back. Montana has approximately 1,800 grizzly bears roaming its mountains and forests. It also has 1.14 million people. But here's the trend that should make every Montana resident nervous. The bear population is stable. The human population? It's shrinking for the first time in 15 years. In 2025, Montana lost 4,200 residents. In 2026, we're looking at a loss of 6,800. That might not sound like much, but for a state with barely over a million people to begin with, that's a 0.6% annual decline. Compounded over a decade, Montana could lose 70,000 people by 2035. But it's not the bears driving people out. It's the fires. And the insurance companies fleeing because of those fires. Let me be blunt, Montana is burning. In 2025, wildfires consumed 1.8 million acres. That's larger than the entire state of Delaware, gone, burned. The 2026 fire season started early and it's already worse. By the time I'm recording this in summer 2026, we're at 2.1 million acres and counting. The town of Missoula had 47 days of hazardous air quality in 2025. 47 days where you literally couldn't go outside without a respirator mask. Schools closed, businesses shut down, people with asthma or respiratory issues had to evacuate. But here's where it gets really ugly. The insurance apocalypse. Tom and Lisa bought a house in Kalispell, Montana in 2021. Beautiful place, mountain views, clean air, the American dream. Their homeowner's insurance was $1,800 a year. Totally manageable. In 2024, their insurance company dropped them. Just straight up canceled their policy. No violations, no claims. Just, we're pulling out of Montana due to wildfire risk. Tom scrambled to find new coverage. The only company that would insure them wanted $6,400 a year. That's 255% more. For the exact same house, same coverage, just different year. They paid it because they had to. You can't have a mortgage without insurance. But then 2025 hit. Their insurance company raised rates again. Now they're paying $800-900 a year. That's $740 a month, just for insurance. On top of their mortgage, property taxes, and everything else. We're paying more for insurance than we paid for rent in our old apartment, Lisa told me. And for what? The insurance won't even cover smoke damage anymore. They've carved out so many exceptions that we're basically paying for nothing. They're selling. They listed their house 3 months ago. 0 offers. Nobody wants to buy in a wildfire zone with insurance costs that high. They're trapped, paying nearly $9,000 a year for insurance on a house they can't sell. And there are thousands of Montana homeowners in the exact same situation right now. This is the definition of a population collapse. When people can't sell their homes, can't afford insurance, and can't breathe the air for 2 months out of the year, they leave. They walk away. They take the financial hit and get out. Montana's wild beauty is becoming its curse. The same forests and mountains that attract tourists are burning. And the people who actually live there are paying the price. Number 3, Wyoming. The loneliest place in America. Wyoming doesn't have as many grizzly bears as Alaska or Montana. They've got around 700 in the northwest corner of the state. But here's what Wyoming does have. The lowest population density in America, 6 people per square mile. And that number is dropping. 580,000 people spread across 97,000 square miles. Do the math. You could drive for an hour and not see another human being. Just empty highway, endless plains, sky and silence. For some people, that sounds like heaven. For most, it's a nightmare they can't escape fast enough. Wyoming lost 4,200 people in 2025. In 2026, we're tracking toward 5,500 losses. At that rate, Wyoming will dip below 570,000 by 2027. For the least populous state in America, every 1,000 people matters, and thousands are leaving. Here's the story everyone in Wyoming knows but nobody wants to talk about. The brain drain. Young people are vanishing. I spoke with a high school counselor in Casper. She told me something that should be headline news. In 2024, we had 127 graduates. You know how many are still in Wyoming? 19. 19 out of 127. The rest left for college or jobs and never came back. That's 85% of the next generation just gone. And it's happening in every town across Wyoming. The median age in Wyoming is now 38.7 and climbing fast. In another decade, Wyoming is going to be a retirement state with nobody left to run it. Why? Because there's nothing there for young people. The economy is fossil fuels and agriculture. If you're not in those industries, good luck. The unemployment rate looks okay on paper, but that's because people who can't find work just leave. They're not counted as unemployed. They're counted as former Wyoming residents. And the isolation? Man, it destroys people. The nearest Costco from most of Wyoming is a 3-hour drive. The nearest hospital with full services could be 4 hours away. If you have a medical emergency, you better hope the weather's good enough for a helicopter. Young families trying to raise kids? Forget about it. Your daughter wants to take piano lessons? The nearest teacher is 90 miles away. Your son wants to play on a soccer team with enough kids? That's a 2-hour drive every Saturday. You need to see a specialist doctor? Block off your entire day. This is 2026. We have the internet, we have technology. But in Wyoming, you can still feel completely isolated from modern life. And people are tired of it. The wide open spaces that looked beautiful on Instagram are suffocating when you actually live there. When you realize you can't just go grab coffee with a friend because the nearest coffee shop is 40 minutes away. When you can't take your kid to a museum or a library or a decent playground because they don't exist. Wyoming is emptying out. And unless something changes dramatically, it's going to keep emptying until there's nobody left but retirees and the people who can't afford to leave. Welcome to America's loneliest state. Population declining. Number 4, North Dakota. The oil mirage. Here's a headline you probably missed. North Dakota population down 2.1%, fastest decline since 1930s. That's not from some random blog, that's from the US Census Bureau. And it should be front page news because North Dakota is collapsing faster than anyone predicted. 780,000 people. That's all that's left. And we're losing them at a rate of about 16,000 per year. By 2027, North Dakota might dip below 750,000 for the first time since the early 2000s. But here's what makes this different from Alaska or Wyoming. North Dakota had a boom, a real, honest-to-God economic boom. The Bacon oil fields brought thousands of workers, billions of dollars, and hope. Towns that were dying suddenly had waiting lists for apartments. Restaurants were packed, schools were building new classrooms, and then it all evaporated. Let me tell you about Marcus. He moved to Williston, North Dakota in 2019 when oil was booming. Got a job in the oil fields making $89,000 a year. No college degree, no special training, just hard work and long hours. He bought a house, got married, had a kid. He thought he'd made it. I remember telling my dad, "This is it. This is how you build a life," Marcus told me. I was so confident. Everyone was hiring, money was everywhere, we felt invincible. The oil industry crashed in 2023, not a dip. A crash. Global prices tanked, companies pulled out, rigs shut down overnight. Marcus's company laid off 60% of their workforce. He survived the first round of cuts, then the second. The third round, he got the call. I had a 15-month-old daughter, a mortgage on a house that was now worth $70,000 less than I paid, and no job in a town with no other industries. Marcus said, "What do? You leave. You take whatever loss you can absorb and you get out." He moved to Texas in 2025, took a 40% pay cut, works in a warehouse now, but at least he has a job. At least he's not stuck in Williston watching his savings disappear while hoping oil comes back. And here's the brutal truth. It's not coming back. Not like before. The boom is over. North Dakota bet everything on oil and oil left them stranded. Drive through Williston today. Half the new apartment complexes built during the boom are empty. Restaurants that were packed in 2019 are boarded up. The population of Williston peaked at 35,000 in 2020. Today, it's 22,000 and falling. This is what a boom and bust economy looks like in real time. And the people left behind? They're the ones who couldn't afford to leave when the boom ended. Now they're stuck in a dying town with no economy, brutal winters that hit 30F regularly, and no hope of recovery. North Dakota's state government keeps trying to diversify the economy. Tech jobs, remote work initiatives. But who wants to live somewhere where it's dark at 4:30 p.m. for 6 months and the nearest city of any size is 4 hours away? The answer is almost nobody. And the population numbers prove it. Number 5. Vermont. The youth lockout. Vermont has a wolf problem, not literal wolves, though they might show up eventually. No, Vermont's wolf problem is this. The state is being devoured by its own success. 650,000 people. That's it. That's the entire state. And that number has been flat for 15 years. Not growing, not shrinking, just stuck. But look closer and you'll see the real crisis. The demographics are a time bomb. Vermont's median age is 43.2 years old. That's the second oldest state in America. And it's not because Vermont is attracting retirees. It's because young people are fleeing and nobody's replacing them. Let me introduce you to Amy. Born and raised in Burlington. Went to UVM, got a degree in education, wanted to teach in her hometown. She's 29 now, and she's leaving Vermont in 2 months. Why? Because she did the math, and the math doesn't work. "I got a teaching job in Burlington," Amy explained. "Starting salary, $43,000. That sounds okay until you realize that the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Burlington is $1,850. That's $200 a year just for rent. Before utilities, before food, before student loans." Amy makes $3,483 a month after taxes. Her rent alone is 51% of her income. She's supposed to save for retirement, pay off $38,000 in student loans, maintain a car because public transit barely exists, and somehow save for a future. "I can't afford to live in my own hometown," she said. And honestly, you could hear the heartbreak in her voice. "This is where I grew up, where my family is, where I wanted to raise my own kids someday, but I can't. The economics make it impossible." And she's not alone. Vermont loses thousands of young people every year. They graduate college and immediately leave. The ones who stay? They're either wealthy enough that costs don't matter, or they're scraping by with roommates well into their 30s. Here's where it gets worse. The median home price in Vermont is $385,000 for a starter home. Nothing fancy, just a basic house. On a teacher's salary, even with perfect credit and aggressive saving, Amy would need 12 years to save a 20% down payment. 12 years of living like a broke college student, never having an emergency, never taking a vacation. "My friends in North Carolina are buying houses," Amy said. "Same teaching job, same salary, but their rent is $1,100 and houses cost $240,000. They're building lives. I'm treading water." She's moving to Charlotte in September. She'll teach there, make about the same money, but she'll actually be able to afford to live. Maybe even save, maybe even buy a house before she's 40. Vermont is beautiful. Vermont is safe. Vermont consistently ranks as one of the best states for quality of life. But quality of life means nothing when you're priced out of participating in that life. The state's population is aging rapidly. By 2035, demographers predict that 30% of Vermont's population will be over 65. Who's going to run the state? Who's going to teach the kids? Who's going to work at the hospitals? When you lock out young people with unaffordable housing, you're not just losing population, you're losing your future. Vermont is dying slowly, peacefully, beautifully, but dying nonetheless. Number 6. South Dakota. The tornado economy. South Dakota has roughly 10,000 people spread across 77,000 square miles. They also average 36 tornadoes per year. Some years it's more. In 2024, they had 42. That's almost one tornado per week during storm season. And let me be clear about something. Living in tornado country isn't like what you see in the movies. It's living in constant low-level anxiety from April to September. It's checking weather apps obsessively. It's having a go bag ready. It's teaching your kids tornado drills before they learn to ride a bike. But the tornadoes aren't even the main problem. The main problem is that South Dakota has no economic diversity whatsoever. Agriculture and tourism. That's it. That's the entire economy. If you're not farming and you're not working at Mount Rushmore or the Badlands, your job options are McDonald's or Walmart. I'm barely exaggerating. The median household income in South Dakota is $63,000. That's $12,000 below the national average. And for young people, it's even worse. The average starting salary for college graduates in South Dakota is $38,000. You can't build a life on $38,000 in 2026. Meet the Peterson family. Dave and Karen lived in Sioux Falls, the largest city in South Dakota, with a whopping 195,000 people. Dave worked in construction. Karen was a dental hygienist. Combined income of $87,000, a solid middle-class income. They had 2 kids. When their daughter turned 14, she got really into competitive gymnastics. She was good, like potentially scholarship level good. But here's the problem. The nearest competitive gymnastics facility was 140 miles away in Omaha, Nebraska. We drove to Omaha 3 times a week, Karen told me. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, 5 hours of driving, $80 in gas every single week for 2 years. Then their son got diagnosed with a learning disability that required specialized therapy. The nearest therapist who could help? 210 miles away in Rapid City. The family made that drive once a month, sometimes twice. We spent more time in our car than in our house, Dave said. And we weren't even in a rural area. We lived in the biggest city in the state, but South Dakota just doesn't have the infrastructure for modern life. They left in 2024, moved to Minneapolis, same jobs, similar salaries. But now their kids have opportunities, they have options. They have specialists and facilities and programs within 20 minutes instead of 2 hours. We loved South Dakota, Karen said, but loving a place doesn't mean you can thrive there. And that's the story of South Dakota in a nutshell. Great place to visit, brutal place to live if you need anything beyond basic survival. The state is losing young families at an accelerating rate. Between 2020 and 2025, South Dakota lost 18,000 residents under 40. That's 2% of the entire population, and the trend is accelerating. By 2030, demographers project South Dakota could lose another 35,000 working-age residents. When young families leave, businesses close, schools consolidate, towns shrink, and eventually you're left with gas, stations, grain silos, and ghost towns. South Dakota is beautiful in its own way. The wide-open prairies, the Badlands, the Black Hills. But beauty doesn't pay the bills. It doesn't educate your kids. It doesn't provide career opportunities. And increasingly, Americans are choosing opportunity over beauty. Because you can always visit beautiful places. You can't visit a future. Number 7, Maine. The oldest state in America. Maine just hit a milestone that should make national headlines but won't. The median age in Maine is now 45.1 years old. That makes it officially the oldest state in America. Not Florida with all the retirees, Maine. And here's the terrifying part. It's not because Maine is attracting older people, it's because young people are vanishing and the ones left behind are aging in place. By 2030, demographers project that 32% of Maine's population will be over 65. Think about that. 1 in 3 people. Who's going to run the state? Who's going to staff the hospitals? Who's going to teach? Who's going to keep the lights on? 1.37 million people live in Maine right now. That's it. And last year, for the first time in modern history, more people died in Maine than were born. More deaths than births. That's not a population decline. That's a population crisis. Let me tell you about Dr. Sarah Chen. She's 34, an emergency room physician, and she just quit her job in Portland, Maine after 3 years. "I'm burned out," she told me bluntly. Not from the work, From the impossible staffing situation. Sarah worked at Maine Medical Center, the state's largest hospital. Her ER shift was supposed to have 5 doctors on duty. Most nights, they had 3, sometimes 2. The hospital couldn't recruit new doctors because young physicians don't want to live in Maine. I was working 14-hour shifts 6 days a week, Sarah said. No backup, no relief. Patients stacked up in hallways. We had an 82-year-old woman waiting 7 hours for a bed. 7 hours in an emergency room because we had no capacity. And it's getting worse. Maine has a severe shortage of healthcare workers across every category. Nurses, technicians, specialists. The state's population is aging rapidly and needs more healthcare. But the workers are leaving because the pay isn't competitive and the lifestyle isn't appealing to young professionals. Sarah just accepted a job in Boston. 20% pay increase, fully staffed ER, actual backup when she needs it. She feels guilty leaving, but she can't sacrifice her own health for a system that's failing. Maine is beautiful, she said, but you can't run a modern state with an aging population and no young workers. Something has to give, and what's giving is people like me. We're leaving. By 2027, Maine is projected to have fewer than 1.35 million residents, and the ones remaining will be older, sicker, and more dependent on services that fewer people will be around to provide. This is a death spiral, literally. Number 8. Nebraska. The forgotten middle Nebraska has 1.96 million people. It also has something most people don't know about, one of the highest out-migration rates for college graduates in America. 62% of people who go to college in Nebraska leave the state after graduation and never come back. Think about that. You spend billions of dollars educating young people at the University of Nebraska and other state schools, and 6 out of 10 immediately leave. That's not a brain drain. That's a brain hemorrhage. And the ones who stay, they're not thriving. Meet Jason, 27, who graduated from UNL in 2021 with a degree in computer science. Good degree, high-demand field. He thought he'd stay in Nebraska, maybe work in Omaha or Lincoln, be close to family. I applied to 40 jobs in Nebraska, Jason told me. 40. You know how many interviews I got? 3? And all 3 offered me between $52,000 and $58,000. Meanwhile, Jason's roommate from college moved to Denver and got a starting salary of $89,000. Another friend went to Chicago and started at $95,000. Same degree, same graduation year, but 50% more money. I stayed for a year trying to make it work, Jason said. I took a job for $55,000 in Omaha, but I was living with 2 roommates at 26 years old. I couldn't afford to date, couldn't save money, couldn't build a life. I felt like I was treading water while everyone else was swimming. He left in 2023, moved to Austin, now makes $92,000, has his own apartment. Actually has disposable income, can save for his future. I love Nebraska, he said, but Nebraska doesn't love me back. There's no future there for young professionals unless you want to work in agriculture or healthcare. That's it. And the numbers prove it. Nebraska lost 11,000 residents in 2025. The state's population is now below 1.95 million and dropping. By 2030, Nebraska could have fewer than 1.87 million people. That's a loss of nearly 100,000 in just 5 years. The state keeps trying to address it with marketing campaigns. Stay in Nebraska. There's no place like Nebraska. But marketing can't compete with reality. When other states offer better jobs, better pay, and more opportunities, young people leave. It's that simple. Nebraska is slowly emptying out. And unlike Alaska or Montana with their dramatic landscapes, Nebraska doesn't even have tourism to fall back on. It's just empty cornfields and fading towns. The forgotten middle of America is being forgotten for a reason. Number 9. New Hampshire. Live, free, or leave. New Hampshire's state motto is live, free, or die. But increasingly, residents are choosing a third option. Live, free, somewhere else. 1.39 million people. That's barely more than Maine. And New Hampshire just recorded its first population decline in 30 years. Lost 3,400 residents in 2025. On track to lose 4,800 in 2026. And here's the cruel irony. New Hampshire has no sales tax, no income tax. It's supposed to be this libertarian paradise where you keep more of your money. So why are people leaving? Property taxes, the highest in America. Let me explain how this destroys families. Meet the Rodriguez family. Maria and Carlos bought a modest 3-bedroom house in Nashua in 2019 for $320,000. Their property tax bill that year was $7,800, high but manageable. Then the town reassessed property values in 2023. Their house was now valued at $445,000. Their new property tax bill, $11,200 a year. That's $933 a month. Just in property taxes. We didn't move, we didn't renovate, we didn't do anything, Maria explained, but suddenly we were paying an extra $3,400 a year just to live in the same house. Then 2025 hit. Another reassessment. House now valued at $485,000. New tax bill, $12,950 a year. That's $1,079 a month. We're paying more in property taxes than some people pay in rent, Carlos said. And for what? The schools are cutting programs. The roads are terrible. Services keep getting reduced. Where's our money going? They sold their house last month, moving to North Carolina, where property taxes on a similar house would be $3,200 a year. That's $9,350 less per year. Nearly $10,000 that they can use for literally anything else. New Hampshire lures you in with no income tax, Maria said, then traps you with property taxes that make it impossible to build wealth. We felt scammed. And they're not alone. Middle-class families across New Hampshire are making the same calculation. The hidden tax burden is driving them out. By 2028, New Hampshire is projected to lose 15,000 residents. And unlike some states, these aren't low-income residents. These are middle and upper middle-class families, the tax base, the ones who fund schools and services. When they leave, the burden falls on whoever's left, which means even higher taxes, which drives more people to leave. It's a feedback loop that ends in collapse. The final count, so there you have it. 9 states, 9 different crises. But one common theme: America is reorganizing itself. People are voting with their feet, and they're voting to leave these places behind. Combined population loss in 2026 for these 9 states? Over 200,000 people. That's a mid-sized city vanishing in a single year. And the trend is accelerating. By 2030, these 9 states could lose a combined 800,000 residents. Some towns will become ghost towns. Some schools will close permanently. Some hospitals will shut down. Some entire regions will be abandoned. This isn't doom and gloom. This is math. When costs outpace opportunity, people leave. When climate makes places unlivable, people leave. When infrastructure fails, people leave. And here's what nobody in power wants to admit. These states aren't coming back. Not without dramatic changes, not without massive investments, not without completely rethinking what it means to live in these places. The bears will inherit Alaska. The fires will consume Montana. The winds will blow through empty Wyoming towns, and the rest of America will keep moving to the same 15 states that already have too many people. This is the great reshaping of America. It's happening right now. And these 9 states are just the beginning. So if you live in one of these places, or you're thinking about moving to one, now you know what you're getting into. Sometimes the most American thing you can do is admit when something isn't working and choose something better. Live free or leave. The choice is yours.